Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Rolls National Basketball Podcast, as we continue through the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm Adam Webster, and I'm joined today by Marc Campbell. Marc, welcome back to the Podium Pod.
Thanks for having me.
It's a somber time. And Jacob Doole from pickandroll.com.au. Jacob, it is late. We are tired. We're emotionally tired. We're physically tired. We're mentally tired. The Boomers are out of the 2024 Paris Olympics after losing to Serbia in overtime.
They are, and it's one of those ones where ordinarily there's no shame in going out to a team like Serbia with the best player in the world, but just the way that it happened, as you said, it was draining. It was up and down. There's a lot for us to talk about, but I honestly don't know what it is. So let's see where we end up.
Well, we'll start with the fact that it was a 95-90 final. Patty Mills put the Superman cape on in the first half. He scored 20 points. He also scored the tying bucket in the dying stages of the fourth quarter to send this through to overtime. Patty could not have done more to deliver this team a semi-final berth. Marc, we spoke about Paddy's efficiency off the ball. We spoke about his lack of efficiency on the ball. All of that just went out the window as soon as the ball was thrown up by the referee at the start of this contest, because it was a completely different Patty Mills. He did everything for this offense, particularly in the first quarter, and the Superman cape was well and truly placed around his neck. He was every bit FIBA Patty.
Yeah, FIBA Patty was on display in the first. We talked before. I was going through his synergy numbers for the warm-up games and the Olympic tournament. In 7 games, he had run 49 pick and rolls, whereas either his offense or a pass out of it. And he was scoring 0.469 points per possession. So if 100 possessions were played, right? Yeah, it's awful. If 100 possessions were played, he was scoring 50 points, 20% turnover rate, and then you saw a few tough shots go down in the first half. And, he got to the rim. He got a few to go down at the rim. He was getting outside of the level coverage. He had a few tough shots go down. And I think what we saw, though, is it a regression to the mean in the second half. We saw regression to the mean in terms of we saw block shots, we saw turnovers, we saw bad possessions, and, that happens. But in the first half, he was dynamic and he was unbelievable. And I really thought they should have done a better job of leveraging the fear that he had created in terms of guys coming up to the level to get pocket passes into 4-on-3 situations and different actions, using him as a decoy. You can't blame them for leaning in, but you would have liked to see a little bit more use of him as a decoy.
Jacob, it's everything we've been talking about all tournament long. Patty, brilliant in the first half, but just couldn't seem to get it going. And it was almost a gift and a curse that he got it going in the first place, because then he tried to do too much in the second half at different points in time, and it wasn't working. And maybe it masked the fact that the offense wasn't really running all that well when it wasn't Patty Mills in the first half. Or maybe it was just the fact that Patty Mills, was fighting for his FIBA life out there. And unfortunately, we believe that his FIBA career is now over. That is the way that it ends for Patty, as well as a couple others that we'll get to across the course of this episode. But, for Patty, it was the best of times, but it was also the worst of times as part of this game.
100%. He just sort of sums up that roller coaster ride. But I think what you said, Marc, is correct, that it didn't feel like there was enough being done to capitalize on all that good work he'd done early. You can't fault Patty Mills for his efforts, really, because he built that massive lead in the first half. He hit the shot to send it to overtime. But in between, Patty was the hero in the first half. And when Serbia locked in on him, everyone else kind of went, oh, shoot, we need to do something now. Tried to do it all one-on-one the way Patty had been doing. That didn't work. And then when that didn't work, Patty tried to put the cape back on and do it all himself, and that didn't work. And it all just kind of spiraled from there. The turnovers, the missed shots, just the sloppy possessions. So it all just happened very quickly once those shots stopped dropping for Mills, or he stopped getting those tough looks or open looks to go. It all kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah, look no further than the turnovers. Truly. You don't, if you want to look at the warm-up games to this, the Boomers showed us exactly who they were when it came to taking care of the ball. And they were inconsistent, they were careless, and look no further than the turnovers. And it was a problem from day one. And it's the reason that they went out here.
We talked about it all tournament long and pre-tournament, Marc, in the warm-up games. And nowhere was that more evident than Josh Giddey in this contest, because there were live ball turnovers by Josh in the worst possible spots. That was an ongoing theme of this tournament. He finished with 25 points on 11 of 20 shooting, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 fouls, 7 turnovers. And some of the turnovers were so egregious and frustrating for most fans and for those of us watching, that you just wondered if there was something else the Boomers could do in the half court or bring the ball up the floor. It's an ongoing method with the Podium pod this season across the whole Paris Olympics, because the Opals have a lot of trouble with turnovers too. It's incredibly frustrating when a team doesn't take care of the ball, because it's the most fundamental thing that you can do to try and get as many or more shots than your opponent.
You can't keep giving really good teams more possessions than you and expect to come out on top. You just can't do it. And it's not like, I would say the worst thing with the Giddey ones is they seem careless. And that's the worst. So it's selfish. He's not a selfish player. They seem careless, and he is consistently not taking care of the ball. And it's been from day one. And if this is the guy who's supposed to be driving your engine, and he is, and he's talented enough to do it, he is, you can't just keep giving other teams the ball, especially when the best player of the world plays on the other side. It's not a recipe for winning basketball.
How do you balance the creativity of a ball handler like that with the tendency to just egregiously throw the ball away, Jacob? I mean, you see such fantastic flashes from Josh Giddey of playmaking ability and the ability to survey what's happening and make the best decision. And then you see turnovers like the one he threw from under the basket, pretty much straight down the throat of a Serbian defender, that resulted in a basket straight away. And with the margin for error of this game being overtime, all of those turnovers that resulted in baskets, and most of them did, cost the Boomers the contest. At the same time, Josh stepped up. I mean, he had 25 points. He hit 3 3-pointers. He was, confidently shooting the ball, which is what we've asked for, but he didn't take care of the ball when it mattered.
And I think it's obviously a tightrope, as you've said there. The easy answer with him is that it's age and maturity and experience. You'd like to think that he'll tidy up some of those mistakes as he gets older, but the problem is that he is the engine for this team already. He's really been thrust into that leadership role in this awkward transition period. And Gorgon's clearly tried to empower him and say, this is your team. Mm-hmm. You run it. You do your thing. But there's pros and cons. And as you've said, Marc, we've seen them all throughout the tournament. And I think the most frustrating thing was just, yes, he did a lot of good stuff, but situationally, you've got a 24-point lead. You're up by double digits still heading into the half. In the first half, they had 7 turnovers. In the third quarter alone, they had 8. They gave up 6 offensive rebounds. You just have to, as Josh Giddey, you just got to settle things down and run your team and take care of the ball. It doesn't have to be perfect, but with that lead in hand, you really just have to steady the ship, and it didn't happen.
Getting a couple of comments to my comments around Patty Mills. Ben, I don't shy away from negative comments, right? Yes, I did have a crack at Patty Mills earlier in this tournament, and yes, he did put the Superman cape on. Never said he wasn't a hero. Never said he didn't win us a bronze medal. I just said he needed the ball out of his hands a little bit more. And in the first quarter, he absolutely torched Serbia. He blew the game open. He was every bit the FIBA Patty that he has been across his career. In the second half, he was not. He was the opposite of that. He was doing too much. And he did come through and send us to overtime. So I'm not going to take back anything I said about Patty Mills in previous episodes. I stand by those comments completely. He's a hero. He's a great player, but he needed the ball out of his hands a little bit more. But thank you for the comments. We'll keep showing them up on the screen as long as they're not trolly or sweary or anything. Then I'll put them up, no problem. But I think we've got to talk about some other guys that played roles in this game, some positive roles, as well as some guys that were effectively benched. I mean, Dyson Daniels played a positive role on defense. He was a demon, but he didn't score, Marc. So it's tough when you've got such a defensive weapon to deploy, but he doesn't score any points. That takes away something from you. So for Dyson, I think he will learn so much from this experience and take so much from this experience. But he locked down Bogdanovic in the first half. That was a little bit different in the second half, but a really impressive tournament overall from Dyson Daniels, and kind of a breakout couple weeks.
Yeah, I think you could take a lot of good from what Dyson did over the past month with the build-up, with the tournament. I think he's really established himself as one of the premier perimeter defenders, and I think you're going to see in his new setting in Atlanta next to Trae Young, he's exactly what they're looking for. I would expect him to have a breakout year. I would expect him to take all the things that he did defensively in this tournament, bring them to Atlanta, and have his offensive stuff amplified, because he's playing next to a guy in Giddey that, yes, is a creative passer, but brings no gravity in terms of shooting the ball or coming off ball screens. And what you're going to see in the Atlanta office with Trae Young is there's going to be so much gravity, and there's going to be a lot of cuts to be had to the basket. There's going to be a lot of actions where he's playing in a 4-on-3, and he's doing a wonderful job in those of either finishing, making good decisions on the pass. And to me, I think he's lined up to have one of the breakout years of any guys in the NBA. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him in the most improved discussions. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him starting and playing in the playoffs in Atlanta, making a really big run in the East.
The Podium Pod is brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete, with sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching. Team Feet socks are built to outperform, whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong. Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet for designs and worldwide delivery. Head to teamfeet.com. We thank Team Feet for all of their support across the Podium Pod this season. Jacob, I want to talk about Dante Exum. He was fantastic all tournament as well. I used the word on Twitter during the game, steady. There was a poise to his play on both ends. He really stepped up, and I think, he's got at least another one Olympics, maybe two left in him. He will be one of the leaders of this team in Los Angeles, and it bodes very well for his role on a pretty stacked Dallas team heading into this NBA season as well.
Yeah, and you're right. Steady, I think, is a good descriptor, but at the same time, he was steady while also bringing that change of pace that the Boomers needed at times. They wanted to get out and run, and he was someone who wasn't turning the ball over, but could also just get it and go and push the tempo and make the right decisions on the fly there. So we've kind of seen that in previous tournaments when that run and gun wasn't quite as much the Boomers' identity, and he really was that sort of X factor and a bit of a change of speed. He only became more important, I think, in this tournament with the way that the Boomers wanted to play. And yes, on the whole, it didn't really pan out. But I think Dante being able to come back and play through that injury that he had and still be effective was really impressive and bodes really well for his role moving forwards with this team and in the NBA, as you mentioned there.
Marc, we've talked a lot about Jack McVeigh in this tournament and the trick or treat nature of Jack at times, but it was treat tonight. 13 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 3 3-pointers, and played solid defense, the best defense that we've seen from him in this tournament by a very, very long way. I mean, that may very well translate to some really positive things for him in the States this season as he heads over on a 2-way contract with Houston.
Yeah, Jack's not scared. Not scared at all, ever. I think one thing that tonight that was phenomenal was the way he shot the ball, the way he made good decisions on closeouts. A lot of times in previous games, we've seen him just shoot, be so diehard in terms of, I'm a shooter, I'm going to shoot this no matter what the closeout was. And I think tonight he had a really nice mix of, if the closeout was late, shooting the ball. If the closeout was out of control and high hips, he was showing under control, not getting travel calls, but getting downhill, finishing a few times. He really was a guy that empowered them in the fourth when it got sticky and they couldn't get anything and there were no good actions to be had. McVeigh made shots, McVeigh attacked closeouts, and he really, really kept them in it. I think if they would have came out on top or even get into overtime, he was a massive story to me in terms of the pop he gave them in the fourth.
Question here from our very good friend Michael Hubin. Coaching, thoughts on rotations and defensive scheme on Jokic. Mark, what say you?
Pray. I think honestly, it just came. It really came down to they had Jokic and you didn't. And you look at the end of the game when it got tough. Tip off the Patty layup, like that's going down. 2 points there. Come down the other end, trap, find an open shooter, no problem. Back down, Patty driving, steal by Jokic. Come down the other end, fade away, bucket, up 3. I mean, look no further than they had the best player in the world. He slows it down, brings the game to basically a crawl, and it doesn't matter what you throw at him. They got 1 steal off of one of the doubles, and that was it. But as soon as you come over and you double him, they went in the third quarter, right block Jokic, and it was either a bucket for him. If they came over and low man got in front of the dunker, it was past the corner. If they didn't get in front of the dunker, it was to the dunker. He sees the matrix in a way that nobody else does. He slows it down, and he's going to find great shots every single possession. And I think one thing that Jokic does, and whether you can see process or results, and it doesn't matter makes or misses, his process is going to be the same every single time. He's going to get phenomenal shots. And if it goes in or not, it's not going to affect him at all. He's going to continue to make the right play every single time.
Jacob, there's a lot of comments coming through about Joop Reith. We've talked a bit about Joop Reith across the tournament. You know, Gorge went for it in this contest. He benched Nick Kay. He wasn't playing Nick as much. He did that in favor of Joop Reith. Played Jack a lot more at the 3 and slid Joop up to the 4, so he's playing sort of bigger lineups as well. Should we have seen a little bit more Joop Reith in this tournament, do you think? Or is that might be a little revisionist history as to the rotations that were deployed?
I think it's definitely easier now, isn't it, with the benefit of hindsight to look back and say,
we just lost.
X should have played more and we wouldn't have been in this position. I think, look, you can see the argument both sides of it. I still stand by sort of the discussions that we've had, and I've heard you guys having when I haven't been on the pod, that, you know, Reith has his shortcomings. You can see why Gorgon wouldn't go to him. You know, he's not as good defensively as a Magnay or a Landale. He doesn't fit those schemes that they want as much. He's not quite as mobile and doesn't read the play as well. Yes, he brings that extra shooting, but he's maybe not as polished in other areas. So I think there's a give and take there, as we talked about with Josh Giddey and his playmaking, or Paddy Mills when he's hot or not. You know, there's pros and cons to all of this, and I think Gorgon weighed them up when making a decision with Reith. Whether it was the right one or not in hindsight, it's hard to say. But I don't think you can look at this tournament as a whole and say, you know, the one reason that the Boomers haven't won a medal or haven't won the gold is because Joop Reith didn't play more. I think it's a discussion to have about whether he could have, but I can certainly see why he didn't.
There are a couple of other decisions, Mark. Joe Ingles didn't play this whole tournament, and it's been publicised that there was a decision made to potentially leave Matisse Thybulle at home and take Joe Ingles. I mean, you can't play 12 guys every night, so it would be egregious to suggest that was another factor. But how important, and this is probably more of a basketball philosophical question for everyone watching at home, how important is it to have end of bench guys who have role enthusiasm and wave the towel and, you know, are veterans and provide that feedback and provide that ongoing support and, you know, encouragement on the bench versus guys that are not happy because they're not playing?
Incredibly important. I think you've seen it with the U.S. team. Somebody doesn't play and it's back home here, at least it's a whole brouhaha. Like this is disrespectful to this player and
this guy, Horace Halliburton.
Yeah. Everything's a shot across the bow and it's disrespect and how could you ever? And these are his accolades. So I think you can be upset about how players played. I think you can be upset if you want about these selections and this and that. But if you want to talk Matisse Thybulle and Joe Ingles, they took Matisse and they didn't take Matisse. They took Josh Green in the Matisse role, and Josh Green was horrible. And now if you want to be upset and say, hey, we would have loved to see Matisse in the Josh Green role, like Jacob said, hindsight's 20/20. Like you have no clue if he would have played better, worse. You have no idea. in terms of senior players being taken and rank being pulled, yeah, it happens everywhere. Like a basketball team, it's no different than any work organization.
Every
Like,
team.
yeah,
Yep.
it's truly an organization. And yes, rank is pulled, and yes, people have favorites, and yes, like sometimes people miss out because somebody else has a better connection than you. I mean, it happens all over the place. This is an organization, and this is how they ran things.
We now turn to a sad topic, and a comment just came through that I'll share immediately because it encompasses exactly what I was going to talk about, which is that Paddy Mills and Joe Ingles have almost certainly now finished out their FIBA careers, Jacob, and they won a bronze medal. Paddy will be remembered as the greatest boomer of all time. Joe will be remembered as one of the greatest boomers of all time. Matthew Dellavedova will be 37 in Qatar and 38 in Los Angeles. So it is, I don't want to count out Delhi. Delhi thinks that he could potentially play another Olympics, and I definitely do not want to count that out whatsoever, because you could do a hell of a lot worse than taking Delhi at the end of your bench for all that he brings. But it's almost certain that, at least for Paddy Mills and Joe Ingles, this is the end. How will you remember them as boomers?
I think you're right. They're both going to go down as two of the greatest that have ever done it. It's in the moment, it's tough not to get caught up in this game and the way that things have panned out. But you have to remember, these are two guys who have been there for the long haul. You know, they've been through a lot more ups and downs than a loss like this. You know, they've built this program not from the ground up, because that groundwork was done, you know, in the decades prior, but they really helped to elevate it to that next level, to where the Boomers could even hope to compete for a medal and, you know, play in an overtime game in the quarterfinals against a team like Serbia. You know, it wasn't that long ago that was an incredible result. So for these two guys to come into this program as youngsters and really set the tone and build from the ground up and take it to where it's gone with that bronze medal in Tokyo, and the high standards that are held now that we're seeing in how disappointed everyone is with a loss like this, you can't really overstate that impact, I don't think, on the Boomers and on basketball in the country, because they've done a lot, and you can't really look past that, no matter what has happened the most recent time out.
Yeah.
Marc, from an outside perspective, you haven't watched a lot of Boomers basketball. You've watched a lot of Boomers basketball the last few weeks. Paddy Mills goes to a different level. We've talked about players like Dennis Schroeder going to a different level, Evan Fournier at times going to a different level. How have you seen the way that Paddy Mills has played in international play?
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is, yes, there was probably a foundation laid before these guys, and you always want to leave something better than what you found it. And I think you could say for both of these guys, they have left this organization, this federation, better than what they found it. There's now an NBA academy on your homeland. Like, there's two different top 10 draft picks coming out of Australia. There's, you know, way more in the pipeline. There is a hope and a dream of making it to the NBA for almost every basketball player. And these two specifically, Paddy being an NBA, multi NBA champion, Joe playing at a high level, I think they've given, and then representing Australia the way they've given a beacon of light to be like, oh, that guy can do it. I can do it too. And I got a chance to do it. And I don't think you can discredit the injection of hope and life that they've given the basketball players and the children of Australia. So I think seeing FIBA Paddy and seeing FIBA Paddy really cook in Tokyo, you know, in Renaissance here performance in the first half, I think he's really going to leave his mark on 15 years down the road. What you see in terms of Australian basketball out there, that will be a representation of how he represented the green and gold.
We haven't seen the last of you, Marc, on the Podium pod. We're going to have to do a wash up of all of this sort of stuff, because there's so much more to talk about in the wake of this game. But it is nearly 10 past 1 in the morning here, and Jacob and I have jobs, so we'll be jumping off. But as far as the comments go, Jacob, I'm just going to throw you in it. Where's Ben Simmons? Where is he?
I think he's off in the lab filming his 10th workout video of the off season, getting himself ready for the next ray of hope for
He's making
NBA and Boomers
threes in that
fans.
workout video, though. He's making
Bernie
so
Lee's
many
coming for you.
threes.
You better watch
Yeah,
out.
that's
Bernie
right.
Lee's coming.
That's
Don't
right.
let him hear you.
No, I really appreciate Ben Simmons' workout videos. I think he looks very, very impressive in all those videos. So I'm
for the
looking
record,
forward to
they
seeing the resurrection of Ben Simmons this season for the Nets.
get
He's
me
gonna-
every time.
You're right.
I always, coming into every season, I want to see Ben Simmons play well, and I keep on getting my hopes up. So, if this is the
Same.
year, I'd be
This is-
happy with that.
This is the thing. Like, Ben Simmons is turning into a bit of a meme on like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, but Australians want to see Ben Simmons do really, really well. Like, everyone is rooting for that kid. They want to see him play well. They want to see him show out. They want to see the all-star that he was earlier in his career. There is not one Australian that I've met who believes that they want Ben Simmons to fail. Every single one wants Ben Simmons to succeed. We just wish he would be wearing this uniform sometimes. That would be really good. So hopefully that happens, and a bunch of people are saying no, we don't. So I'm trying to stay positive, guys. I'm trying to stay positive. It's very hard to be positive. We just got knocked out of the Olympics. The Podium Pod is not ending. We have a do or die quarterfinal against Serbia tomorrow night. Only it's the Opals instead of the Boomers. So we will be here after that contest as well, and we hope that we have a few more Opals episodes for you as we continue on. So Jacob, thank you for staying up super late for this episode and being with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me as always. It's about the only thing that is worth staying up until 1 a.m. for, I think.
And Marc, thank you very much for being with us. Enjoy your day.
Yeah, thanks.
Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, the podcast feeds, and go to pickandroll.com.au and subscribe for all the great words that Jacob and Marc have written as well. I don't write, though. I just talk a lot. For Adam Webster, this has been the Podium Pod. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time.